Hey y'all, thanks for clicking on the video. Today I'm going to show y'all how I load and baffle my kiln to get some wood dried. Got to get this done so I can get a customer happy. Okay, putting in the last moisture probe. This kd250 kiln comes with various sizes of moisture probes. There's an inch, inch and a half, and 2 inch. This is some 10-quarter material here, so we're going to be using the 2-inch moisture probes, and it's pretty straightforward actually. It comes with a little bitty drill bit, just enough to kind of get these things started. And you drill your holes and install your probe. They're stainless steel, they don't rust. This kiln's been in use for several years. I like to have them oriented in a way. Like this one, the hole is there, and this one, the holes are that way. And that way I can kind of get them together here. They're supposed to be about 1.25 inch spacing between them. And that way I can put my leads in here to the computer and get everything, not have anything interfering with each other. It doesn't matter which lead goes in which one. All it's doing is measuring a voltage across. The wire colors are really to help you when you go to put this together. And they're all labeled. This one's probe number 4. This thing works pretty good. When we turn it on, we'll see what our current moisture level is. There's 4 probes that you put into the stack. It's more if you have a longer kiln, but for 20 feet that this one is set up for, there's just 4 probes. I'll show you what all that looks like here. Here's my first probe, and I like to have them in various places in the stack. So you can see this one is kind of about midway, near the top, a little over midway, and then the last one is, or first one, that was the first one I put in, is near the bottom. That way I can kind of read through here, and I know which probes are which. Probe number 2 and 4 this is number 2 here in the front. 2 and 4 are the front, and 1 and 3 are in the back. Odds in one end, evens on the other. And that way it helps me to understand what's going on with my airflow. If I see, for instance, the front half drying faster than the back half, then I know I didn't do something right with my baffling. So we got one more layer to put on this joker, and then we can get this, start working on getting this baffled. I tell you what, some days having a lull, it almost feels like cheating. I watch some of these people struggle with like these light farm tractors and stuff, loading their kilns and whatnot, and they got a lift. I'm putting it down, and I never have to lift with this lull. Everything is always down if I'm paying attention to what I'm doing. Not such a big deal with 4-quarter, but when I'm dealing with 9-quarter, down is important. Gravity needs to be my friend, because this stuff is heavy. Very heavy. One of the things I'm doing, I'm actually starting my baffling now. It's really important that this front face here is straight, and the joint here in the middle where I've got my 2 stacks is closed. Because if it's closed here, then I don't have to do a lot of baffling at this point right here. And I don't like doing that in the center. I can and I have, because sometimes you just have to. But in general, I try to keep this as closed as possible. Just trying to keep control of the airflow as best as I can. All right. Ow. Let me show you what's going on here. The reason I flipped that board over. When this board is down here, it's just the right size for that gap. But down here, I've got a pretty good size gap left, and I want to fill that. So I'm going to take that board on top, drag it over here, and have 3 boards on this top layer, and then take the 3 boards on the other end and spread them out like these are. That way I don't have to cut another log, because it's hard to get one more. Basically, I need 2 more pieces about that size, but I'm averaging 4 or 5 out of a log. So it's just not worth it to cut another log. Okay, that should do. Now I can take my pallets of weights and put it on top, which is the next stage in the baffling. So I'll catch up with y'all in a minute. Okay, the next thing I'm trying to do here is make sure that I got this nice and straight to my stack, which it is. I just got to push it, move it in a little bit further. And that way, this is also part of my baffling. And I'll show you how that works out here in just a second. All right, as you can see here, you know, that's pretty flush, and that's an important thing, because right now I'm trying to manage the airflow just a bit more. A couple of my blocks are out of place here. Vibrations move them around sometimes. Each of these pallets weigh about 1,000 pounds. And this is set up to where I have positive load transfer. The spacers here line up with my stickers in between, all the way down to my carriage. And what that does is it helps make sure that basically these top couple layers behave themselves. They don't end up getting too wonky and curling up too much. Next step is my chamber is about 21 feet long overall. So I want to make sure that my overall length of my stack is under 20 feet. You can see here on the end, I'm just a little bit long, so I'm going to grab a tape measure, make sure that I'm under 21 feet. I should be, because I'm pretty sure none of these are longer than 10 feet, so I should be all right. You can see these are good and closed. All of them are like that all the way down. So that makes sure that the air goes where I want it to. I don't bother with it if I can get it closed like that most of the time. Can't always do it, but most of the time I can. But if necessary, what I could do is I could just take a piece of, put a piece of plywood over the top of that and close it up. And then here on the other end, you know, and I'll show you how I've standardized a lot of this stuff, because it used to be when I first got this kiln, it would take me about a half a day to get it loaded, and baffled out. Now I've got it down to an hour if I'm not playing with the camera talking to you. So let's get the other pallet on there, and then we can move forward. And like I said before, having a lull sometimes almost feels like cheating. Okay, so one of the main things that I've learned with this kiln is to standardize as much as I can. I have a minimum height that I like to try to get, which is around 54 inches plus off of the floor, and make sure that this will close down like I want. Now, that 54 inches includes these pallets. So now that I've got it in here and I got it fully inserted, I've made sure that my front is inside the doors. That's important. So the next thing is this plywood baffle. I've got these three pieces cut to where they are exactly the length from the foam in the back to the closed door in the front. By having it that way, then that makes sure that everything it gives me something to work from. This kind of creates another 0 point for me. So having these cut exactly to the right length makes it real convenient. This was one of the areas where I was having some trouble before. And once I figured out to do this, everything got easy from here. Alright, the next thing I like to do is I like using this foam, because for some reason I can't ever quite get this to lay flat, but by having this foam here, it helps it to kind of seal better. I'm doing everything I can to force the air into going where I want it to go, not just any old direction that it wants to go, because that's what air does. It decides, I want to go this way, bite me, stop me. Okay, so there's first stage, the baffling, and I always have that little curl up there at the end. I don't know why it's there, it's just warped, but I'll fix that in a minute. So next is to get this bottom area and this top area closed off the rest of the way. The reason I use plywood here is so that when I've got some other pieces of baffling that I use that are also standardized to block off my ends, and it gives me something to screw to. So that's the next, is I'm going to start from the back and work my way up to get this closed in, because that's too big of a gap, and then get this bottom dealt with after that. Okay, the way this kiln is set up, it's a 40-foot shipping container. This white area, that's actually the kiln. That's my kiln chamber. Back here, we cut a door into it, a little roll up, and this is where I keep my baffling for the kiln. and project lumber. So whatever project I happen to be working on in the shop, I can store in here so it's somewhere convenient to the shop right there. Out of the rain, I can close it up, all that happy stuff. Also gives me a spot to where I have something that came out of the kiln and it has a chance to acclimate here before it goes into the shop if I'm going straight out of the kiln to the shop. But at any rate, right now, next step is to get some of my kiln baffling out of here and get it into the kiln. Okay, so here's my end right here. As you can see, I have my plywood that baffles the top, my hinge flap, my foam. All of that stuff lines up pretty closely. My foam, I can pull that out later. For now, I just wanted it back for illustration purposes. It's just wedged, compressed a little bit. So next are these pieces here. This is another standardized part that I use. It goes right here to help close off this whole gap right here. As you can see, that's all pretty stair-stepped. It's not completely even. And I can also look here. This edge of plywood here is my is where the door closes to, and you can see the end of my boards here are behind that. So I know that my door will close correctly. So that's the next step, is get these pieces put in, one on each end. Both ends look about the same. These are taller than they need to be. And that's just to give me some flexibility with the stack. If it's a little low, if it's a little taller, it'll still reach the plywood on top. If it's a little lower, well, it'll for sure reach the plywood on the top. So the way I do this is I go ahead and get it screwed there on the top. Then I pull the top bottom over to where I'm sighted in to the edge of the plywood that I showed you a minute ago. And sometimes doing that, it makes stuff move around. And I got to redo my screw because angles are that way. And it doesn't have to be anything particularly awesome. And then I just get 2 screws into it to make sure everything stays put. And I'll do the same thing on the other end. Okay, so this is what it looks like inside when it's all said and done. This piece of plywood here is for there's a gap between the brick here on this pallet and the brick on the next pallet. So that's what this piece of plywood is for. It's just to kind of cover that up. See the baffle on that end? That closed up real good. The one on this end did not want to. I was struggling with it. So to fix that, a little bit of furniture foam just stuffed in there to close that gap up the rest of the way. It's real important to have some of that around if you're going to have a kiln. You always got little stuff that's just a pain in the butt to close up. And the foam goes a long way to making it work. So next is to get the bottom. I got 3 pieces of plywood cut for that. I'll show you how that works here in just a second. Alright, got a little problem. Right here on the end. Doesn't look that bad, but it's enough to throw off the baffling. Remember before I had a piece of foam stuck in here because I couldn't get everything to close the way I wanted it to? Well, this is the culprit right here. And what it was doing when I went to go put my diagonal baffle in for the floor, it was throwing everything off, and it was just this one little piece here. So all I got to do is nudge it over some to get everything back in line. I have to talk with that guy who stacked this stuff for me Because what it was doing is it was throwing everything else off. I couldn't get this piece here, this diagonal piece of baffling right here, to close up properly because this was misaligned. Now everything should line right back up and go right together again. Yep, looking good. Of course, nothing lines up anymore. What do you know? Now that I got everything lined up the way it's supposed to be, it closes right up. So we'll call that a win. Little nudge right there. One of my stickers is a little proud. There we go. This is one of those things where you really got to be anal with it. If you're not, it's going to come back and bite you. So you can see I got that. It goes all the way down at 45-degree baffle. Without it, there's too much air that escapes out of the bottom. I don't know how well this is showing up, but actually my stack is slightly diagonal. It steps to the right as you look at it, just a hair. And that's just to kind of help the air try to get into the top. I always have a little trouble with getting good airflow in the top of this thing. So the next step is to close this side up here and turn on the fans and double check and confirm that my airflow is correct. Okay, so here's where I have the computer at for this kiln. I have my circuit breakers in here, and then this is the kd250 or Nile L200. Crank this sucker up, let it do its startup cycle. Alright, there we go. So, to program it, you start off here with the select button, you get configuration, you got probe 1 on, probe 2, probe 3, probe 4. That way you can kind of adjust your chamber. Dry bulb 160, no, that's not right. I set it to 120. This is a yellow pine, so 120 is fine. So that's my dry bulb. My wet bulb, I leave that set at 75 degrees. My final moisture, I set to 12%. That's all you really need in this area here down on the southern Gulf Coast. Wood group 1 and start. And as you can see, my dry bulb, it's 75 degrees right now. This is March 1st. Welcome to the Alabama Gulf Coast, folks. It is a warm, sweaty day today. It's muggy. But you can see my different probes read 61, 56, 61, and 60 for an average of 59.4. So it's going to look for, it's set to 12%, so when my probe average hits 12, it'll shut itself off. So now I need to turn my compressor on, my heat on, my vent has got to be on to auto, and humidification is off. And now I just got to let her run for a little bit. It takes a while to get from ambient to operating temperature because the heater inside that unit, it only changes the air temperature by 7 degrees at a time. So it's real important that your kiln chamber is well insulated and does not have any leaks. Everything seals up really good. This thing can be 120 degrees in there, and on a cold day it'll still have frost on the outside of this thing. It won't melt the frost even though I got a kiln cycle going. So I've got it insulated adequately. So I just let her run. This is one of my vents. This is my exhaust vent here. This will only come on for when the operating temperatures get above what it's set to. Not too important on pine, but real important on hardwoods like oak and whatnot. My intake is over here. It's pushed over, but it'll draw air in here and exhaust it out the other side. So that's it for getting the kiln loaded. Just over an hour later, this is how much water is coming out. It's kind of cool. It's neat. It always surprises me just how much there is. In just an hour, you can see how it's running here. But it's run all the way out to here. And eventually, we'll make it all the way out to where you see the darker pavement out in the middle. Amazing to me. Okay, this is the sense system that I have hooked up on the power panel for my kiln. This is hooked up to the main breaker that would shut off the whole system, so it's reading everything that's coming on. This little spike that you see here at the beginning, this is where I turned on the fans to check the airflow. And then this is when I powered up the kiln, that little spike right there, and turned on the heat. And this is when it started the dry cycle. And then you go down a little further here, and that spike there is when the compressor first kicked on. And that was at 11:40 a.m. and I first put power to it at about 5 after 11. So that's pretty cool there that, you know, it lets me see in real time. I can monitor remotely what's going on with my kiln. I can see what the heat's doing, what the compressor is doing, and up here at the top, that's how many watts it was drawing at that particular time. You know, so 0.7 kilowatts. And there's a little gap in the data there. It'll fill itself in a minute. It's 1 o'clock right now, and you still see it's still drawing that 7,400 watts. And if you program in what your local power rate is, it'll let you'll be able to figure out exactly what it costs to run this thing. So, you know, because it has it in real time, it shows you, you know, what it's costing for my current bill. It's running up $3 here in a couple of hours, and you know, this is what's going on now, and this is what's been going on today in just these last couple of hours. So I think that's pretty neat. You know, it's running up $1 so far in 2 hours. So it takes about 7 to 10 days. So this should take, for this load, because it's thicker lumber, so it takes a little bit longer. So, you know, 94 cents in a couple of hours, call it $1 in 2 hours. In 10 days, that's 240 hours. So around 120 bucks or so for my bill to run this device. This takes a lot of the guesswork out. I really like having this on here. Well, y'all, I think that'll do it for this video. I hope you found it useful, and if you did, please click like and subscribe, and I'll see y'all on the next one.